Hey everybody, my name is Paul Esden Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. And boy, do we have a guest for you, an absolute superstar. So let's waste no more time. Let's introduce him. This man is Dr. Sharif Tabbah, or aka Dr. Reef. And for those who don't know, Dr. Reef is a doctor of physical therapy, a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and the co-founder of Athletics Rehab and Recovery with multiple locations in South Florida. And he graces us with his presence. Dr. Reef, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Dr. Reef, I got to tell you that my first introduction to you was thanks to my guy, Leger Deuceable Deuce, who hopped on the show a little bit ago, and he said, my guy, Dr. Reef, is actually working with Carl Lawson. I said, oh, really? And then ultimately we ended up connecting the dots. So first off, Dr. Reef, tell us about your practice. Tell us about kind of your journey into this thing.
Sure. Deuce is a good friend of mine for many years. He was a client a very long time ago. So it's always been a pleasure getting to see his growth and progress. So big shout out to my guy Deuce. Athletics Rehab and Recovery, we do sports physical therapy as well as sports performance. We take our injured athletes from the point of injury all the way to returning to play, and even often healthy athletes and just working on improving their body. We take a very total body approach, looking at right side of their body versus the left side, trying to improve any type of imbalance that we find just to make them a better athlete as a whole.
Well, Dr. Reef, it's time for you to get a little flex here, and I'm sure that's not something that you're opposed to doing. I've seen some of your clientele and some of the viral videos with Alvin Kamara and the unique rehab and unique training regimens and everything that you guys bring to the table. So give us a quick flex. Give us some of your clientele, Dr. Reef.
We're blessed to work with so many of the top athletes, especially in the NFL, but in all kinds of sports. We're working with guys, like you said, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, Melvin Gordon, Robbie Anderson, Olivier Vernon. The list goes on and on and on. So a bunch of great guys. And of course, in the NBA, we have Will Barton. We have some MLB guys, some pro tennis girls. You name it.
Wow. Well, Dr. Reef, let me go into this because I find it interesting, because I would have thought on the surface that the clientele that would reach out to you would be a player gets injured and then they want to then rehab and recover. But from what you just said, that's not always the case. Sometimes players just come to you to be to get in better shape and to unlock the next level of what they can bring to the game. So that part is true. It's not just injured players coming to you and trying to rehab and recover from that.
Correct. Yeah. That's honestly how things kind of started earlier on. And we would have a lot of athletes come injured, and then they would learn about our approach and how we would get them healthy, but not just healthy. They come in, let's say, for a knee. So rather than just saying, oh, let me look at your knee and fix your knee, we take a total body approach. So the first thing we do is look head to toe, joint by joint, right versus left, and say, okay, well, what else is going on that maybe needs some attention that may or may not be contributing to this, but regardless, while you're here, let's address it. So now these athletes would come in and say, hey, I came from my knee, but now my shoulder's feeling better than it's ever felt. I'm feeling not only rehabilitated, but I'm back to maybe 110, 120% of where I was. I'm actually feeling stronger, more explosive. A guy we had last year coming back from Achilles surgery was Quan Alexander. And he was quoted saying that, hey, Dr. Reef in athletics made me more explosive than I've ever been. It's not only am I back to where I need to be after an Achilles, but I'm actually even better. So that's something that we really always strive to do. And as we started finding athletes getting back from injury, they would then say, well, hey, I'm coming back next offseason, and they're healthy. And they say, I just want to, what else can we do here? So that quickly grew into just coming and learning about, hey, there's so much more to offer than just injury rehabilitation.
And wow, that's got to be a great source of pride for you that someone would just come for the injury and they're like, whoa, wait a second. I got a bunch of other body parts here. Let's try to unlock what we bring to the table. That's got to be pretty awesome to also hear that, because I've heard from a lot of athletes just in the general world of sports, because it's not just NFL for you, that are just openly saying your name. It doesn't seem like they're paid advertising. They're just saying that of their own accord.
Yeah, no, for sure. That goes a long way, and it means a lot to speaks volumes to the work that we do here and my support team and everybody else. And it's just we couldn't do it without everybody. So it's a big team effort, and it makes me super happy to hear our clients and our athletes speak so highly about the work that we do.
Let's talk about your specific work with Carl Lawson. Now, was Carl Lawson one of those cases where it was a guy who was injured and just wanted to get that injury looked at, or was there a prior relationship there as well?
Yeah, so we started working together this year. It was based off of coming back from his Achilles. And he told me, you know what, I've been watching you on social for a couple of years. I've been meaning to get over here to kind of just do some of this crazy balance and core stability stuff I always see, and all these unique corrective functional exercises and things like that. But obviously, injury kind of made that push and brought him on over. So now, as we've been working together earlier this offseason, prior to him reporting back to OTAs, started on just like, let's get some rehab work going. And from there, we started to develop into other things and bringing on performance training and getting in some traditional lifts and performance, as well as working on our return to run, jump, cut, and all those kinds of things.
All right, let's take a quick detour because I'm just fascinated because I've seen the balance stuff. And where do you come up with this stuff, Dr. Reef? The Alvin Kamara one that has a couple million views that's going around social media where you're throwing – Alvin is balancing on one leg and you're throwing balls at him. He's like catching them in midair also while maintaining his back. Like, where do you come up with this stuff, Dr. Reef? It's fascinating.
Thank you. No, I mean, honestly, we're taking, basic concepts of working on maybe balance or strength or hand-eye coordination and trying to put it all together. So maybe combining multiple systems. I mean, all these things are designed as progressions. So we'll put out certain crazy exercises to see that are fun and impressive. But of course, it's not like day one, we're jumping up onto all these things. So it's all natural progressions over time, and just trying to look at a function that we're trying to improve. So maybe it's, a core stabilization improvement that we want to address. So as a running back, for the example of Alvin, we're talking about we need good core control, good balance for change of direction and shiftiness, but also as he's got to maybe come through the hole, take contact, and continue to make progress upfield, he needs to have good anti-rotation force. So it's not just about, strengthening what we call the sagittal plane front to back, squats, lunges, all these things. It's like, well, hey, can I do those movements while also controlling different planes of movement, side to side rotation, all those kinds of things, and be able to put it all together. And as an athlete can get better at all of that, it's like, well, okay, now we got to make this harder. Now we got to bring it up to another level. Let's add a cognitive component where they have to think about, a red hand on this color, or a right hand on this color, or left hand on this color, or catch based on which hand I call or which number I call. If it's an odd, now it's a right hand. Different levels like this. That now, like in football play, for example, they're not just going out and thinking, okay, I run straight and I make a left. They got to read the defense. They got to think about the play, listen for the audible, and based on that, what do they need to do? And maybe it's an option route. So there's so much more cognitive component in addition to their physical that we try to simulate that in as many ways as possible, both from rehabilitation as well as performance.
And Dr. Reef, it sounds like, especially from what you said, Quan Alexander's another example, that you have experience specifically with Achilles injuries. And it's interesting with the advancements of modern technology. A bunch of years ago, an Achilles was like a death note on your career. Now it doesn't seem quite that way, that there is a path to be able to get back. So when you get a player that's coming off a serious injury like an Achilles, what's the plan? How do you get them from injured and, again, Achilles to trying to get them back to where they were and, quite frankly, even further than where they were before?
Yeah, all that will really depend on kind of how they present day one, right? So we'll start, obviously, like we said, with that total body assessment and see what other things hop out. But let's focus on the main issue. So let's say an Achilles in this situation.
Sure.
We want to see, hey, what can they do? What can they tolerate? What does their strength actually look like? What do their movement patterns look like? So maybe we need to also look up the chain. We need to look at not just that calf and ankle. We got to look at the knee, the hip. How does all that work into play? How does the core come into play? So often working on core stability, coordination is forgotten about. And it's not just for all the fun, cool circus act exercises. It's also, that's the number one contraction foundation that we have to be able to establish in order to then have good movement. So there's a saying that says proximal stability for distal mobility, which means close to the body, you got to be strong and have good stability so that you can be mobile and free in your limbs. So it's very important that we incorporate all that. So let's say we have with an Achilles somebody who has some decent strength, but maybe they're a little bit later in the process and they just don't have that good power yet, that good pop back. We always say that good explosiveness. So now we have to say, okay, you've done calf raises to death till you're blue in the face. That's not enough. How do we need, you do some box jumps, you're not super comfortable yet. So maybe we'll add a band assistance from overhead and work on some calf specific pogo jumps. So just starting getting a little bit more dynamic and reflexive and getting confident. So important after injury is restoring confidence. It's very normal for an athlete who's had an injury to now be fearful of certain movements, whether it's conscious or subconscious. Getting comfortable jumping again, jumping over somebody and maybe landing. I've had athletes come back from an ACL where they say, hey, I'm comfortable doing all these box jumps and these drills. Then I go back to OTAs. I have to go I'm going to catch a pick. And I know that I'm in the air and I know there's a pile underneath me and I'm dropping balls because I'm afraid I'm going to land on these guys. So then we come back after OTAs and we say, okay, now we have to work on that function. So now we're going to work on not only a box jump, but I'm going to have you run, jump over a box, catch a ball in the air, and be comfortable landing in traffic. Or, different things like this where we start to simulate those more specific issues that you're feeling functionally on the field. So it's really fun just kind of working with that.
And Dr. Reef, let's go specifically to Carl Lawson. I mean, to be honest, I mean, he's a physical freak. I mean, the body is unbelievable. And that was a wow factor for a lot of Jet fans as he was coming in, that he was already in what appeared to be unbelievable shape. And he was firing on all cylinders last year prior to his injury. What was it like for you? You've worked with a lot of different clients all over the place across sports. What was it like working with Carl Lawson, both behind the scenes and on the scenes, as you're trying to get him back?
Yeah, Carl is definitely a freak of nature. He's an absolute monster. I think he's even been quoted calling himself a monster, so he knows. Yeah. But he's a big guy, he's a strong guy, and his work ethic is like untouched. I mean, unparalleled. So he's the first one in the door, the last one out the door. We tease him. We're like, go home. You've been here for 7 hours. Like, go home. He's done his own little workout, and then he comes in and we're like, all right, we're going to do this rehab, and then we got some legs, some squats, and then we're going to get some balance. He's like, oh, well, I did my pitch shark at 6 this morning already. And I'm like, it's 7 in the morning. How'd you already do a workout? The guy's, he's an animal. So, it's fun, a ton of fun to work with him. We'll do extensive amounts of work on the rehab side, the prehab side, the performance side, the injury prevention side. And after about 4 hours, we'll get outside, we'll do some return to run, some aggressive sled stuff, some return to cuts, simulating different performance position specific things. And then he'll come back inside and do 2 more hours on his own with his guy's yoga block out, and he's stretching, he's doing little toe curls. And I'm like, did you forget your earlobe today? Like, it's hilarious. There's no muscle he doesn't hit every day.
And to what one of the ones, and you shared it on your Instagram. By the way, everyone should follow you on Instagram. That's where I saw a lot of the pictures, photos, videos, and different work that you seem to be doing with Carl. How does it help? I saw one of the workouts you were doing with him had him in the water as he was both lifting and also working underwater. How does anything underwater, especially because, again, he injured his Achilles, so his lower part of his body is under the water as he's working out. How does that assist the process?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. I'm glad you brought that up. Aquatic therapy stuff is huge. So we do it from either a rehab standpoint, maybe someone like Carl. We also do it from a performance or active recovery standpoint for healthy guys. So in Carl's example, or an Achilles example, we're in the pool and we're working on return to jump, cut, confidence with that leg, like we talked about. So in a pool, obviously you are buoyant. So you have less force absorption, because the water is taking some of that for you. So that's kind of that landing is what we call an eccentric contraction. So where the muscle has to control an elongation. So that's where you get a lot of soreness from. That's where a lot of concern comes with like landing mechanics and things like that. So in the pool, you're getting assistance there. But then on your concentric, so you're jumping out of the water, it's actually resisted. So jumping out of the water can be a bit resisted because you're jumping against the resistance of the water, or driving your knee up against the resistance of the water. So you're able to develop concentric power without eccentric overload. So it's a really nice, unique way to address things from a power standpoint. And even on an Achilles, so maybe let's say Carl's doing a good single leg calf raise at full body weight. But anytime someone's coming back from Achilles, it's always hard to get that top end. So they can get the heel up, but they're not getting that full range of motion. So when we get in the pool, now you're a little bit buoyant, we can get all the way up on that calf raise. And we can work the top end of that calf contraction that you might not be getting at full body weight, for example. And then we can also do more dynamic movements. So let's say we'll do ladder drills, or even we've done some ladder drill into like almost pass rush simulation type moves. So, step, and then he'll swipe and swing around. But he's able to go through those exact movements under a low load, to be able to restore confidence and gradual strength to the Achilles or to the healing area. So it's really a great tool.
Hey, Dr. Reef, I'm not sure if it's a one-call be-all. It's probably a case-by-case basis. But how long does it take to recover from a ruptured or torn Achilles?
Yeah, that's definitely a case-by-case situation.
Okay.
You see, we thought we broke the record last year with Quan, getting him back
right.
in like 7.5 months. He was in a great spot, went back to the team, and they worked him back gradually just to be safe and things like that. But within 7.5 months, he was ready. We were doing everything, full speed, all kinds of drills. But then you had Cam Akers come back, and he came back as running back in like 5.5 months. unbelievable. He just took all the wind out of our sails, but I was happy for him. But so that was incredible. Of course, that was a kind of a new procedure that was done, a little bit different of a technique that has the whole industry kind of like, okay, this is interesting. So
right.
I think you've referred some people out now that have gotten Achilles tears since then to get a similar type of repair just because of the results that we've seen with Cam, for example. So to answer your question, it could be as short as 5.5 months, evidently, that's new, to as long as, a year and a half.
Wow.
Sometimes even 2 years to feel 100%. More commonly, you're looking at like 9 to 12 months.
And Dr. Reef, is it possible, because the one fear, I guess, in a general sense, is that Carl is such an explosive player. Obviously, he's got a lot of weight. He's got a lot of ability. That can he have the same explosiveness? Because that's the nature of his position as a pass rusher, and that's so important. So when Achilles robbed that away, at least temporarily, is it possible to get back to that same level or perhaps even a greater level than he was at before?
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of back to the point we mentioned about Quan, for example. I mean, he had even said himself, hey, I'm not only as good as I was, I feel even more explosive. So if we get a lot of the right work in, you can absolutely accomplish that. Carl is a very big guy, so obviously it's a little bit more challenge for him, but he's so strong. He's come back great. His calf is huge and strong, and he kept so much strength and size considering the situation. So super happy for him. But you look at someone like a DB, that could be a little bit more challenging because now if you don't have that confidence, now you've got to backpedal, brake, not take a false step, that half a step difference that you might not have, that power that you want to, that can make the difference between, a pick, a PBU, or a completion. So, on D-line, of course, there's a lot of driving against force and whatnot, but, sometimes that half a step might not affect him as poorly as it could in, let's say, a DB.
And Dr. Reef, is the Achilles injury a fluke injury? And the reason why I bring that up is because, unfortunately, several Jets players actually had their Achilles go last year. And one of the ones that comes off the top of my head, the Jets were playing on Thursday Night Football, and you could see Marcus May on a random play, no contact. He was just backpedaling, and you could almost hear the audible pop of his Achilles, and he just went down, and there was no one near him. And then, as I've seen a handful of these Achilles injuries across all of the NFL, it seems like it's almost flukish, like there's nothing they could have done to prevent the injury. Are they flukish, or is that just kind of, that just have to be the random several cases that we were looking at?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. Marcus is actually another guy that's been down here with us. He's doing amazing. Super happy for him.
Absolutely.
It really just depends. So what you'll often see is prolonged Achilles tendonitis that is being ignored will often lead to an Achilles rupture. It's not everybody though. So sometimes guys will say, hey, yeah, my Achilles is bugging me, but I kind of kept pushing, or, I would take a painkiller, do what I had to do, or just kind of rehab it. And I kind of had the pain. I kind of kept pushing. And then one day it just popped. I mean, that's, the studies show that happens a lot. It's typically a preceding Achilles tendonitis. Then I've had guys, athletes who have said, hey, I never had any Achilles pain. I made one move and pop, that was it. So it really just depends. It's pretty crazy.
Well, Dr. Reef, before we get you out of here, first off, anything that we could have missed on the entire Carl Lawson experience? Again, he is a fan favorite, and we haven't even seen him play a regular season snap yet for the New York Jets. Anything else we missed that fans need to know about Carl Lawson and his amazing rehab with you guys?
No, I mean, the biggest thing is this guy is hungry. He is ready. He looks great. He's coming back, I think, possibly stronger than ever. I know he's one of the most locked in athletes I've seen probably all offseason. I know he's going to come back with a vengeance this year, and he can't wait to do it. So I'm excited to see what he does. I'm sure the fan base is excited, and time will tell in a couple of months.
And Dr. Reef, give us one more final plug on everything that you do. Where can everyone reach out to you both on social media portals? And, of course, feel free to pound that resume, baby. I was looking at that thing. I was like, sweet, Lord have mercy. Dr. Reef, no wonder Deuce was singing your sweet praises, and he has been doing it not just on our show. I mean, I've seen him, again, this Free Willy, doing it on every show that he goes on because of your amazing work, man.
I appreciate that. I'm going to have to give Dudes a little Christmas basket.
Yeah, there you go. Very nice.
Everyone, I'd love to check out my work. On Instagram is the best place, at Dr_Reef, REEF. You can also check out at Athletics Rehab. Athletics is spelled ATHLETIX, Rehab. And our last one being athletics.performance. You can check out everything from the rehab, sports performance, all the crazy balance, stability, all that good stuff. You'll see it all there.
Well, Dr. Reef, normally I say you're one of the gosh darn best in the business, but it's clear after this interview, you are clearly the best in the business. So thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it, Doctor.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.